Hi everybody. In these two talks, today and last week, St. Peter's and the next new normal, I've chosen to record somewhere with a view, somewhere with space and light, really as a prophetic sign, because my sense is that God is saying to us that it's time now to begin to emerge out of lockdown, out of constriction and individual privatization, into the space and the new possibilities and the views of our city. And in the story of Noah that we looked at last week and this week, when he begins to emerge out of his lockdown, I want us to look today at what is the first thing that he does. Let me read it to you and see if you can spot it. Genesis chapter 8. God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that's with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." So Noah came out, together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. All the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moves on land, came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an ark to the Lord. And taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. What was the first thing that Noah did when he came out of lockdown? Did you notice? He takes some of the precious animals that he's been keeping safe, the clean ones, in other words, the best of them, and he builds and puts them on an altar to the Lord as a thanksgiving to him and a sacrifice. What's the first thing that you do when you come out of lockdown? Get a haircut? Go back to the gym, the pub, join the queue for Primark, meet up with friends, go to a restaurant, maybe book a holiday. But have you ever considered the first thing that we might do is to build an altar to the Lord and put a sacrifice on it? And what would that even look like? I want to talk today about financial giving as an act of building an altar to the Lord and making a sacrifice. And at the end, I want to give you an opportunity to do this. The question that I've often been asked over the last 12 months is how St. Peter's doing financially. I mean, like, is it holding up all right in the pandemic? Because the finances of the church basically are you and me, little old you and little old. I mean, we do get some finances from external sources, particularly for the restoration of the tower, and also grants for the Love Your Neighbour, some of the stuff we've been able to reach out into our city. But essentially, the whole ministries of the church is by the giving of you and me. And obviously, therefore, the common question would be, well, given the last 12 months, how is the giving? Well, remarkably, up until the end of 2020, the giving held up extraordinarily. And the finances of the church, through a combination of actually being able to make some savings through 2020 to use the government retention scheme. Some of the things that we used to do in person obviously went online, and that was a saving, but also combined with the extraordinary faith and generosity of your continued monthly giving. I'll level with you though, the first quarter of this year, of 2021, has been a different picture. Almost a tenth of our regular givers have now had to stop their regular giving. It equates to towards £5,000 down each month. And I think this is for a variety of reasons. Most obviously, many have fallen on hard times financially. They've been made redundant or they've had a loss of income. And I'm just so glad that we've been able to set up a hardship fund to help members of our community who are in tough times. I think a second reason is what I would call reprioritization. The pandemic has been a refining time for all of us. And difficult times have the habit of causing people to either lean into the practice of their faith more or away from their practice of their faith. And what they do with their giving tends to follow either one or the other. And we've seen some of that. And then I guess another reason, the third reason, would be about not meeting physically Sunday by Sunday in the building. It's hard to get excited about the vision of St. Peter's sometimes when you feel disconnected from St. Peter's. And we used to do our giving through 2 gift days when we were all together singing praises to God in the building. And of course, we haven't been able to do that. So what makes this moment, though, even more interesting is that just at the moment where we're seeing a slight drop in the regular giving that's happening, we also sense that God is emerging us out of lockdown and giving us new possibilities into the expansion of his kingdom in our city. Like Noah, it says that he is to come out and multiply and be fruitful and increase. And we're seeing these same kind of opportunities right now. So in the area of church planting, currently our little family of churches across the city comprises St. Peter's, St. Matthias and St. Cuthman's. But by September, we'll have added another 2. We'll go from 3 to 5. We'll have a new church partnership in Hove and another one in Hollingdean. And all these take central resourcing, staffing and finance. Then there's the well-being. Amazingly, 6 months ago, we were able to rent a property for the work of Safe Haven. In particular, and that's been able to stay open throughout the lockdowns, where we've been able to host workshops for people who are vulnerable, people who need help with their emotional or mental health, people who need somewhere to go with their key workers from their hostels. That contract is coming to the end at the end of this month. But extraordinarily, I think God has provided for us another property. Actually, this one has, I think, even greater potential. It's literally 2 minutes walk from St. Peter's Church, and it's larger, and we'll be able to see expansion in that work. That we sense that there's an anointing on what God is doing through Safe Haven, particularly Safe Haven Mother and Baby, Safe Haven Women, these workshops, these links with the hostels. And then the third area, I guess, of expansion, that I could name others, but I think a third area I will mention is online. We seem to have kind of stumbled across this. The opportunities for mission and outreach, although the physical church, I think, will always be primary, there seems to be something about the reach of the online that we would never have known before, and that we should optimize, whether it's Alpha Online or the courses around mental health and bereavement and so on, whether it's outreach on Sundays. And so all these things that collide, where at the same time we need giving and as well as the expansion that's happening. Now, when we talk about giving, we always talk about sort of 2 things. There's 2 parts to it, obviously. There's first of all the thing that we're giving to, the vision of St. Peter's, the evangelization of the nation, the revitalization of the church, the transformation of society. And then the second part is the people who are doing the giving, you and me, those who give. And today I want to talk not so much about the money that we need to raise, but more about the kind of people that God is asking us to be through our giving. Most of the story of Noah that you read in Genesis 8 and 9 is simply Noah responding to whatever God tells him to do. Build the ark, go into the ark, come out of the ark. Until you reach this point where God never commands Noah to build an altar to him and make a sacrifice. That's something that Noah decides to do out of his own choice. But when he does it, God likes that he does, and he calls it a pleasing aroma. Why? Because there's something about giving that reveals something about our relationship, and in particular, our trust in God. Many of us coming out of lockdown are naturally anxious, worried about the future. Of course we are, because the pandemic has exposed our vulnerabilities and our frailties and just how fragile life is. And in that vulnerability, we can respond in one of two ways. Either we try and hold on tighter to what we have. You kind of insulate yourself and your loved ones as best you can against the uncertainties of the world. And that's what most people will do. The other way of responding is you release control to trust God. And the point is that what you do with your money will reveal very largely which direction you're going. One is a fear-based approach to post-lockdown. The other is a faith-based approach. Extraordinary thing I think about Noah is that he comes out of the ark and the first thing he does is to give back to God some of the precious animals that he's safely been keeping through the lockdown. I mean, surely he should hold on to what he's safely preserved so that he can help rebuild his post-lockdown life. For many of us at St. Peter's, these last 12 months have been unbelievably tough financially. Our income has fallen off a cliff. We need to surround those people. For others of us, though, we've actually saved money. The economists are saying that there are £150 billion of household savings that have been saved during the lockdown. I'm one of those people. This year, I've calculated, I must have saved hundreds of pounds. I haven't, my gym membership's been frozen. I have hardly eaten out in a restaurant. I've not been to the cinema once. I've not travelled on a holiday. I've not even spent money on petrol very much. I did a calculation. I haven't spent money on going out for coffees. I did a calculation on how much I've saved over the year. It's more than £1,000. And the question is, that's just because I've just been lucky enough to have a job that has kept on paying me through a lockdown and a steady income. It would be very different if I worked in the retail sector or in hospitality or entertainment. The question is, what will I do with what I've saved? Squirrel it away? Make splash out? I mean, thank the Lord that I'm not a freelance musician in the lockdown. Or will I build an altar to the Lord with it and sacrifice it to re-sow into the kingdom of God? I don't know what Noah's family could have made of it all. But we got no roads, Noah. We got no supermarkets. We haven't built anywhere to live yet. And Noah says, I'll come to that, but I'm just going to build an altar to the Lord first. No wonder Noah makes it into the Hall of Fame in Hebrews 11. Not only does he build an ark when it hasn't even begun to rain yet, but then he comes out of the ark and he builds a sacrifice, an altar, before he builds a house. What do you do when you've come safely through a storm such as a global pandemic? Most people will build a house to secure themselves. But God is calling us to build an altar to submit ourselves. What are you building? Everybody's building something. What are you working on? Finally then, so Noah builds his altar and he puts on it the best of what he's got, first and foremost. The thing that he's been keeping safe before he spends it on anything else. And it says that God smelled the pleasing aroma. You know, whenever we sacrifice something to God, a sacrifice is something that is costly to us, but acceptable to God. Whenever we make a sacrifice to God, it always pleases him. It always comes to him smelling sweetly. And the reason is because any sacrifice that we make reminds God of the sacrifice of his Son, Jesus Christ, who gave himself up, his whole life up, as a sacrifice to God, that he could be used by him. And so our sacrifice, big or small, it's not really actually about the exact amount that we give today, but it is because it carries with it the Spirit of Jesus in it. It's an acceptable sacrifice unto God because it carries with it our faith in Jesus. It's delivered to God as therefore something that is pleasing, a fragrant smell, something that, like the cross, the sacrifice of Jesus, God can take and use. He can help use it by taking and multiplying it, by divinely inspiring it, by making more of it, so that in turn, like the sacrifice of Jesus, it turns people from darkness into light and from death into life. And this is what God is asking us to do, is to put on the altar what we have been safely keeping, so that he can use it for his fruitfulness and his multiplication of his name and his kingdom in our city.